Hello, Randi Rain here, and here's a first, at least as far as I can find, the first video, at least in English, that I know how to look up on how to make a Japanese Tamasudare. Now you're probably going, well, what in the world is a Japanese Tamasudare? Well, that's a good question, and that's hard to explain. It's basically an object, a prop, that can be manipulated different ways so that it makes different patterns that look like different things, and you use it to entertain people. That's essentially what it is. Now, some people might not be too happy that I made this video, and that's people who make these things and sell them, which I am one of those people. Well, I'll address that at the end, so just watch the video. I'll get to that. But then there's one other person. I won't say who it is. I'll just post a picture right here. Anyway, this person thinks that they should be the only one to be able to entertain people with this because, they have Japanese descent. Well, I guess, they just feel that some non-Japanese person might make it look silly.
いきます。そらさてあさてさてはなんきんたますだれさらちょいと伸ばせばちょいと伸ばせば浦島太郎さんのお釣り座を2、3もにったり浦島太郎さん魚はたくさん釣れたかなそれ
It's funny, when I was touring Japan with my magic show, I asked the interpreter about this thing, and she had no earthly idea what I was talking about. But anyway, if you're not Japanese, and you decide to make one of these things, show some class. Anyway, here's how to make one. Just kidding. Alright, the first thing you're going to need is some sticks, and I use 5/16 inch dowel rod. And you need 56 of them, I know that much. And I make them 16 inches long, so you get 2 out of a 3-foot dowel rod. And every one of these dowel rods are just completely crooked. So the best thing to do is just yank every single one of them out, sit down, and just go through every one of them and find the straightest ones. And then that won't be enough because you need at least 30 to be safe. And you'll have to go through again and take the closer to straight ones with it. And finally, hopefully you'll get 30. And once I have my sticks, again, I cut them down to 16 inches long. I do it on a table saw. Chop the end off, cut, go to my stop block, cut another one. And every single one of these things have these stupid stickers on it. So I try to cut away the stickers. That doesn't always work when I'm also trying to cut around the crookedness of the stick. You'll also find some are not completely round and have some really bad spots on them. So you have to get rid of those too. So you count down until you get 56 sticks, and you want a few extras just in case. So every one of these sticks is going to need a hole on each end, except for 2, but most of them are going to need a hole on each end, and these holes are going to have to be parallel to each other. Now that's harder than you would think to be done, especially on 56 sticks to get them all exact. So you have to make a jig. So my jig consists of a piece of plywood with some strips of plywood glued and attached to the other piece to make a little channel here with one end being stopped. So you can put the cut dowel rod into this slot in the center up against the stop, and that puts it exactly in the right spot from end to end. The other end is left open to make it easy to get out. And then you need to build a cradle for the drill press to hold this little jig. So when you put the dowel rod into the jig and it goes into the cradle, you can pull the drill press down, drills a hole, flip it around, drill the other hole, pull that dowel rod out, and then do another one. And you have to do this over and over and over again. And that's over 100 holes, by the way. 2 of the dowel rods are only going to need 1 hole at the end. These things aren't hard to make, but they take a long time to make. So next is for sure the worst part about this whole thing. And that is that these things have to be completely sanded smooth. And I don't mean kind of smooth, I mean smooth like glass. Because these things are going to be sliding, and they can't slide if they're not smooth. And some of these things are just rough as a corn cob. So you have to start off with some pretty rough sandpaper, like 100 grit. Maybe you can get away with 120, but more likely you kind of at least need 100 on standby. And you have to go and take down all the roughness of the stick first of all. And don't tell me to chuck this thing up in a drill. That's not a good idea. This is 56 sticks to do. You're not going to be chucking these things in and out of a drill. Just sit down, get comfortable, listen to some music or a podcast, and sand away. That's your best bet. That's because you're not done with the sanding. Oh no, you have to keep working down to finer and finer grits, all the way down to super fine steel wool. That gets it smooth. Like I said, it's not hard work, it's just a lot of work. Now these things are now really, really dusty, and that dust has to come off before you put a finish on these things. So the best thing to do is use alcohol, or in this case I'm just using some paint thinner. Just don't use water. Whatever you do, don't use water. Water will just pop the grain and you'll have to sand it all over again. And just for fun, I use these engine block stamps and the letter R to brand R's in a couple of the ends of these. Not all of them. So now it's time to paint these, but how do you paint these? Because rods roll, and if you just spray them, they're going to roll away. And if you hang it, well, that might stop it from rolling, but they're going to swing. And also, you're not getting much paint on the stick. The majority of your paint is not going on the stick. Alright, so what I found out is the best thing to do is use a lacquer paint. Lacquer seems to not break down with the oils in your hands. And I found that if you take 2 sticks of wood and tack in some little brads, some little finish nails, that way you can poke the sticks onto those and line them all up. That way you can spray at different angles and completely get at least one side. Then you can go through and flip every one of these over and put them back on the little nails and then do the other side. Did I mention this takes a long time to do? But anyway, you want to do a really good coat here. The first coat needs to be really thick. And there's a reason for that. Can you guess? Well, if your guess is that it's just going to get rough again when you paint it and you're going to have to sand it back down, then yeah, you're correct. Good job. But you don't really have to sand. Just hit it with some steel wool. But every one of these again has to be hit with some steel wool. Maybe sometimes even go back with the sandpaper. But you really want to just smooth it out again. And then you have to take those sticks and you have to poke them back onto those nails once again. And then you have to spray it again. One direction and the other direction. Putting another nice coat on there. It takes a while for this thing. And then this part is really frustrating. Before it was pretty easy to tell which side had been painted and which side wasn't been painted. Now it's which side was just painted and which side was painted before, and it's really harder to tell. So I put a piece of paper towel up here to kind of keep up where I'm at on flipping these things over. Because it takes quite a while to flip these things over. So then it's one more coat. And then this is the final coat right here. No more painting, at least, after this. Now the last thing to do to finish these out is to use my favorite product here, this Howard Feed and Wax. It's like lemon oil something, I don't know, and beeswax. It's good stuff. It works great on finished woods and unfinished woods. No sponsor, I just like this stuff. So now it's time to string these sticks together. And there is a special way of doing it, of course. So what you have to do is each stick has to have a string through the hole, and it loops around the other one next to it. And then that stick will have a string through the hole, which will loop around the next one to it. And then the next one will have a string through the hole and loop around through that one, etc., etc. And what that means is that every one of these holes has to have a piece of string through it. So to tie this all together, I just use 100% cotton twine. Nothing special. So a piece of string has to go through every single one of these holes. So something like a needle is going to be needed. Well, you can just make a needle. Put some CA glue, preferably thinner the better, so it'll soak in. And let the twine soak up the CA glue. And then twist it and let it cure. You can even hit it with an accelerator. And then trim the end to a point. You can even sand it down if you need to. And you have yourself a nice needle on the end of the string. Now I have 2 spools of string and I make a needle for each one. And the idea is you put the string through every one of the holes of the sticks. Just line them all up and put a string through every single hole. Did I mention that this takes a long time to make? But anyway, think about it. As piece of string has to go through every single hole. You have to have a little section of string to tie off through every single hole. And you have this one needle, so the needle has to go through every single hole. So that's why you just line it all up and stick the needle and thread every one of the holes. Once they're all threaded, even the 2 end pieces that only have one hole, pull the excess through and cut off the needle part and save that section. You will be needing that. Then pull out some more string on each side, slide one of the sticks out, and cut the string so that it leaves about 3 inches of string left in the holes of the stick. Then you slide out the next one, cut it, 3 inches or so. Then slide out the next one, cut it, so that there's strings left in those holes, and etc. And you just keep on moving down, pulling the string through and trimming each one, so that each one has about 3 inches of string through the hole. Have I mentioned how much work is involved in making these things? There's quite a bit if you haven't noticed. 54 sticks have 2 holes. That's 108, so it's 110 holes total. Alright, so once again go over how these are tied together. I'm going to start at one end and just do one side. And I'm going to use one of the end sticks with the thread. And that one is going to tie and loop around the next one. And then that one is going to be tied and looped around and tied and looped around. And I'm going to go all the way down one side. And then you flip over and go all the way down the other side. And if you notice, it now allows them to slide. And also notice, of course, at the ends you don't need the 2 holes. If you haven't guessed, this is also a very time-consuming part. You just have to take your time, put a stick down, and then I just use popsicle sticks as spacers. I just break it in half, put one on either side of the hole, put the other stick on the other side, wrap the string around, and just tie it off. And then you slide the next one down, put the popsicle sticks in between it, and you tie that one off. It's just an overhand square knot, granny knot, really whatever you want to use. And then you can slide that one down. And then you move to the next one. You place a stick in front of it. Put the popsicle sticks in place and tie that one. And you keep doing that over and over and over. But you need to keep count on how many you're doing now. That's because at the halfway point, which is 28 sticks, you need to do a double thick spacer. So I stack up the popsicle sticks 2 deep on this one. In the end, this will allow you to do a couple more tricks by splitting it in the center, and also you can find it easier. And then continue to do the same side just like before with the single spacing of the popsicle sticks. Don't try to do both sides. Just stick with one side. Go all the way up one side. And you can roll it up as you go along. Remember, when you come to the end, the last one doesn't have a piece of string in it. And you're just looping it around. Now once you have the whole side done, you can spin the thing around. And as you can see, you can roll it up as you go along. And then as you do the other side, you can unroll it. See, the problem with doing the other side is getting the other sticks out of the way so you can get the string around. That's why you don't do both sides at the same time. You do one side, and then at the spot where you need to tie, you can kind of maneuver it so you can get the string around the stick. And then you can put it back in place and slide it over and then do the next one. And then you keep doing that over and over and over and over and over. And don't forget about the center, because at the center you got to do the double spacing. So make sure you keep count as you do this. Even though it's incredibly boring, keep count. And then do the center with the double spacing, and then you just keep on going and keep on going and you keep on going. Did I mention how long this thing takes to make? Oh, I also should mention that every once in a while you'll pull a string out of the stick. And that's why I keep the extra pieces with the little needle on the end of it, so I can thread them back in, because it happens quite frequently. And then eventually, 110, 12 knots, you'll be done. And this is the home stretch right here. Once they are all tied, you can lay it all out, and you'll have to pull the ends of the strings out from in between the sticks a lot of time. But get them all laid out nice and flat. Then go ahead and kind of cockeye the mat so that it kind of goes at an angle. That'll push the knots away from each other. Get them a little far away from each other so that they're not touching. And then just use like some PVA glue, or I'm using Mod Podge here. You can use Elmer's white glue, clear glue, whatever. Just don't use CA glue here. Use a water-based glue. And put a little dab on each one of the knots, and then kind of go back and dab it with your finger and make sure it soaks in. And hit every little knot with a dab of glue. And then let it dry. And then once it's dry, then you can snip away the ends of the strings. And finally, this thing is done. So there you have it, the Tamasudare. That's how you make them. Well, that's how I figured out how to make them. Like I said, that's just a lot of work. I mean, a lot of work. Anyway, you want to see what I can do with it? Well, here you go. Alright, so here's my very first one that I made. Now, this one is well worked in, and you have to work these in. As you can see, this one really comes out really easy. It opens up really easy. Whereas this one, it's brand new, and the strings will stretch a little bit, and everything will really start sliding a lot better after a while. It just needs to be worked in. Anyway, here's a little demonstration of me telling a little story I made up with it. Alright? Asuke! Asuke! I'm just kidding. Okay, so this story is about a little child. You pick the gender. They were out fishing. Same spot that they always went to, underneath the bridge. And they watched the sailboats go by, waving their flags. Sat there all day and watched the sun set. Until they caught a whopper. So then they go take this fish, go cook it up, and have a nice little rest underneath the willow tree. And there's a reason why you always end with this one, because this is the one that's a pain to get back. And there it is, the suki. Okay, so I had a little fun with the Japanese video of them doing that. I was just playing. It's actually quite fascinating. I left a link below, so please go check it out. It's quite interesting. But anyway, I'd like to point out that every time I've shown how to make something, how I make something, it's only increased in sales, never decreased. So that's why I don't have a problem showing how to make this, because people who know how to make this, who have the skills to make this, who have the tools to make this, who have the time to make this, well, they were never going to buy one in the first place. But the people who may have never seen it before, well, some of them now want one of these. And people who are on the fence of buying one, well, now they understand the price. So I found it never hurts to go ahead and give out the secret. Anyway, that's the secret on how to make a Tamasudare. Anyway, if you want this one, it's on eBay right now. Go check the link below and have at it. Anyway, if you like this video, I sure would appreciate a thumbs up. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe, of course. I want to thank these people right here. These are patrons. These are people helping me out. They allow me to do all this stuff and bring you this stuff on how this stuff is made, and the only one at this point in time that I know of on the internet. So anyway, thank you very much, patrons. If you want to become a patron, of course, there's a link below. Anyway, thanks for watching. What are you doing? Gets me. Don't you get this me? You think he's tough? He thinks he's tough. What? What? Don't come back me.